It is 1 o'clock Central on Wednesday, and the Fed just cut interest rates. So we're going to start there, obviously. Springfield, Ohio, and the people who live there, immigrant or otherwise, are victims of a coordinated GOP smear campaign. So we're going to talk about that. It's useful to understand how and why this happens. So we're going to dig into it a bit. Political violence has no place in our politics, but neither should baselessly blaming it on your opponents and trying to turn it into a campaign issue. But that's exactly what Trump and his campaign are attempting to do. And we want to make sure that you're ready to rebut it when it comes up around the water cooler at work. Plus, I went on CNN and there were literal fireworks. We'll share that clip at the end. Welcome back to the podcast for the 54% of Americans who regularly vote for progress in every election and want to convince their friends and family members to join a majority. This is Majority 54.
Well, Jason, as we're speaking, the Fed just announced a couple minutes ago that they are cutting the federal interest rate by 0.5 point. And, to give you a sense of what this means, the Dow jumped 300 points on this news. And essentially it was a question of, is it going to be 1/4 point or 0.5 point? And you asked me offline, you're like, what does this mean? I was like, it's good. That's generally what we know, is that there are two things that could have happened today. If it were 1/4 point, just because everybody had already baked in that a rate cut was coming. If it were 1/4 point, it would have at least led to a short-term downturn in the market. Now, the short-term downturn in this particular market, I think is dangerous because it's a bit of a fragile market. And so this is just live to fight another day/week, maybe a couple of weeks in this sort of record stock market, which is generally very politically helpful to Harris, because if the economy continues to recover and if they pull off this soft landing, well, hell, that's a historic achievement. Even if voters generally aren't super duper positive, they'll just be a little less negative, which I think generally helps Harris.
Am I right in recalling that Trump was saying he doesn't want the rate cut to happen?
I don't know what his most immediate there's no doubt he didn't want this rate cut to happen.
Yeah, because he doesn't want any good economic news.
Yeah, and he's accused the Fed of serving the interests of Harris and Biden, while simultaneously saying that he wants the power to bully the Fed, which he had done anyway in his administration. Like, one of the reasons why we had such high inflation was that even pre-COVID, Trump was juicing the interest rates and bullying his own Fed. So, it wouldn't be the first time this man contradicted himself.
Yeah, but I mean, it's weirdly, it's in no one's interest for the economy to slow down its recovery, but that is irrelevant to Donald Trump, because all that matters to him is what's in his political interest or his economic interest. And in this case, what's in his political interest is for the economy to not continue to recover at the same pace. I mean, he's pretty much said that before, that if the economy goes, it's good for him if bad things happen in the economy. So, all right, well, I guess that's exciting.
Yeah, so that's good news. Obviously, the news is the dominant news of the past week has been the Springfield, Ohio situation. And this is quite depressing. It obviously made its way to the debate stage. You and I talked about this before. There's this awesome Wall Street Journal article that I recommend everybody go to that is just like a deep explainer about this. And I know you just read it. What sticks out to you about this?
What sticks out to me is that this was clearly a brewing controversy at the local level already. I mean, sort of, not the pet eating business, that's all made up, but what was actually happening on the ground is that this community had is being revitalized by a huge influx of population that it sorely needed in the form of legal Haitian immigrants. And there was, after this traffic accident, there were a lot of people, not a lot, there was a group of people that did not include the parents of the 11-year-old child that tragically died in this accident, that became sort of anti-immigrant activists. And they seem to have been backed entirely by an outside white supremacist group and propped up by them. And then that all, because that made enough noise and signal there, it got the attention of J.D. Vance, which then got the attention of Donald Trump. So this local controversy, which was, it appears to me, pretty one-sided. Like, it seems like the town overwhelmingly is very supportive of their new neighbors and welcoming of their new neighbors, but because there is an aspect of townspeople who are not, that they've now been given a massive microphone. And the other thing that stuck out to me, by the way, Ravi, as an aside, is that anybody who thinks that folks are capturing and cooking geese has never been around geese, because they're mean. And if you even walk near them, they'll try to bite you. Like, you're not going to capture them that way.
Yeah, well, the context that you mentioned is so important. So this is a town that, around the 60s and 70s had north of 80,000 people. And up until about 2015 was about 60,000 people. So it had lost about 25% of its population. So if you're listening to this, some of you may have experience with towns that have been decimated in this way. And if you don't, just try to imagine 1/4 of your neighbors just disappearing, right? It's almost like the leftovers. And the town struggled, and then they started to build manufacturing and other industry, and that attracted new people to town, which happened to be immigrants, which is what happens, right?
Yeah, like that's how you add population usually.
I'll give you an example. I just finished this immigration series I did on the Lost Debate, where I talked about Staten Island, and my relatives came to what was called Linoleumville in Staten Island, which is now called Travis, but it was called Linoleumville because there was a linoleum factory there where there were jobs. They came all the way from Poland to go work at that factory. And that whole town was filled with Polish people. You used to hear Polish spoken on the streets, even through my mom's childhood, right? So this is what happens in America. Now, it's important to note that assimilation, when you're talking about 15,000-ish people in a town of 80,000 people or 70-something thousand people, is never going to be easy. And I think it's important for people to acknowledge that, right? So it has been challenging. And the city has asked for help building housing. There have been new sort of subunits and, equivalents of suburbs and exurbs. And, it's a small town, but like housing built on the outside of this town. But in no point does it seem that the city's leadership are anything but extremely grateful for the presence of these people in their town. No doubt there are going to be residents who are not grateful. That is just how politics works and assimilation works. But J.D. Vance swoops in because of unsubstantiated rumors. And, well, we know what happened. Let's go to a clip where Vance is being pressed when he went on CNN about the rumors he's been spreading.
Just once and for all, you again started this in part by saying that, at which Donald Trump repeated on the debate stage, that, and he didn't say anything about the policies that you're talking about. He just said Haitians are eating dogs and cats. Can you affirmatively say now that that is a rumor that has no basis with evidence?
Dana, the evidence is the firsthand account of my constituents who are telling me that this happened. And by the way, I've been trying to talk about the problems in Springfield for months, and the American media ignored it. There was a congressional hearing just last week of angel moms who lost children because Kamala Harris let criminal migrants into this country who then murdered their children. The American media totally ignored this stuff until Donald Trump and I started talking about cat memes. If I have to, create stories so that the American media actually pays attention to the suffering of the American people, then that's what I'm going to do, Dana, because you guys are completely letting Kamala Harris coast. You had one interview with her. You talk about pushing back against me, Dana. You didn't push back against the fact that she cast the deciding vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which is why a lot of Americans can't afford food and housing.
You just said that you're creating a story.
Public policy.
Sir, you just said that you're creating the story.
What's that, Dana?
You just said that this is a story that you created. So the eating dogs and cats thing is not accurate.
Dana, it comes from firsthand accounts from my constituents. I say that we're creating a story, meaning we're creating the American media focusing on it. I didn't create 20,000 illegal migrants coming into Springfield thanks to Kamala Harris's policies. Her policies did that, but yes, we created the actual focus that allowed the American media to talk about this story and the suffering caused by Kamala Harris's policies.
What a terrible person.
So
First of all, they're not illegal.
No, they're under
legal.
temporary protective status, right? Which actually a lot of them arrived under Trump. This started in 2018, and it was
They're welcomed.
Republican governor, Republican president, Republican Congress as when this started, and they're blaming it on Biden. Now, Trump eventually tried to get rid of it.
Can I add, like, they're not like H-1B visas. They're not like people who are like, oh, well, you know, maybe we'll move there. No, they can't go back to their country because they'll be killed.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead.
There's a lot of things here to unpack. One is they're not illegal. Number two is they're being spoken about as if they are a problem. And again, that is not clear. Right. All available evidence seems to suggest that the people duly elected by this town seem to think that this group of people are doing a lot of good in their community. Even the guy whose son was killed by a Haitian immigrant in that bus accident, I think we played that clip last week, had good things to say about the immigrants generally, didn't want them to be demagogued in that way.
The guy, he literally said, I wish my son had been killed by a 60-year-old white man because he's so upset at how it's been, you know, taken by the right. And so what an amazing person that.
Yeah. So those are two layers of problems before we even get to the very obvious fact that there's been no evidence that these people are eating pets. And JD Vance just acknowledged that on TV, that he's making up stories. So just to recap here, he's saying he has to make up stories to point to a problem that isn't a problem using first of all, it's not a problem in this town, and he's calling them illegals when they're not illegal. So there's just 3 layers of falsehoods. So he's telling stories to tell another false story. That's what he's doing. He's saying, I'm going to make up this thing so that I can call your attention to this other made up thing. That's what we're dealing with here.
And he keeps saying firsthand accounts. He's referring to the one lady, the lady in the article. Yes, read that.
And Jeremy, I hope you can tee up this police report.
There it is.
So I'm going to read from the Wall Street Journal, and then we're going to look at this police report. A Vance spokeswoman provided the Wall Street Journal with a police report in which a resident had claimed her pet might have been taken by Haitian neighbors. But when a reporter went to Anna Kilgore's house Tuesday evening, she said her cat, which went missing in late August, had actually returned a few days later, found safe in her own basement. Let's go to the police report. This police report spoke to Anna, and she advised on 8/24/24 her cat went missing, has not been seen since. She found, quote, meat in the backyard, thinks it was from her cat. No bones or fur around the meat, in quotes. She suspects that the Haitian neighbors, that it's from the Haitian neighbors. No evidence to support this claim. Unknown if the meat she had has actually been cat meat. Anna had collected the meat and put it in her fridge in hopes to get it cremated. She eventually apologized to her Haitian neighbors, I think apparently while wearing a Trump shirt on, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, important. She actually went and apologized to her neighbors. Like, because the normal human beings who are not at the top of the ticket, who you may dispute their normality, some of the people watching or listening, still have the capacity to do things like apologize for stuff like this because they're living in the real world and these are their neighbors.
It's actually unbelievable, and it gets worse. So when we talk about what Vance knows, right? He knows this is wrong, and we know it because of many, 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 many facts. One of which is that he called up city manager Brian Hack. I think this was the day of the debate, and he asked, and this is from the Wall Street Journal reporting, he asked point blank, are the rumors true of pets being taken and eaten? This is Hack reporting this out. I told him no. There was no verifiable evidence or reports to show this was true. I told him these claims were baseless. And then this is more from the Wall Street Journal. By then, Vance had already posted about the rumors to his 1.9 million followers on X, yet he kept the post up and repeated an even more insistent version of the claim the next morning. That night, former President Donald Trump stood on a Philadelphia debate stage and shot the rumor into the stratosphere.
Vance also continues, because he knew that people figured out that nobody was eating pets. He started saying, well, there are communicable disease issues. It turns out, no, all of the communicable diseases have actually gone down since the Haitian immigrants showed up. So that's like,
by the way, good job, Springfield, because here's the thing. if there were, like, would I be shocked if people coming from Haiti, which is a country with a broken public health system and no functioning law and order and any number of catastrophes, came in with major public health issues, major assimilation issues? Absolutely, right? Absolutely, you would assume those things. Somehow this town, which does need help, they've asked for help, is dealing with this rather maturely, yet we have these demagogues who are taking this town that seems to be relatively puttering along fairly well, and now the demagogues are the problem. You ask any of these,
Yeah.
what's the problem in Springfield, Ohio today? It's that kids can't go to school, they can't hold their cultural fests. Life can't go on because Proud Boys are marching in the streets and lunatics are calling in bomb threats.
Oh, and by the way, a lot of those bomb threats, it turns out, are coming from outside the country. So basically, Russia sees this as an opportunity, and Russia is just calling in bomb threats into Springfield as a way to sow division and make this worse. You know, as far as the communicable disease thing, I don't know if everybody listening knows this. When you go through the legal immigration process, they make sure you have every possible vaccination, and if you don't have records of it, you get it again. I've had a lot of experience with this recently, and like it holds up immigration. Like people have to wait until they have all of that in order to get in. They have to go through a lot of health checks, more than a lot of Americans have to just to go to school. So it's it is such a perfect example of how they do not care who they hurt. They do not. The real story of Springfield, Ohio is an inspiring American story about people coming together from different backgrounds and making a town better, and neighbors welcoming new neighbors from outside the country. It's actually exactly the kind of thing America should be quite proud of.
It's really shocking. This really is as clear a choice as it gets in this election, right? Mm-hmm. When you're a kid, you're watching these cartoons and you're watching He-Man versus Skeletor, and you're like, that's not how life works. That's no villain leans into the villain persona like that, right? Life is complicated, you know. The heroes are not as clear cut as you think, and the villains aren't always, you know, sitting, you know, petting their cats and thinking about how they're going to take over the world. Vance is as pure a villain as it gets. We've already talked about Trump, and they're just villainous in two very different ways, but converging on some of the very same ideas. For a sense of what an alternative could look like, not because I'm ready to pull the lever at the ballot box for Governor DeWine, but I do think he represents what is a much more civil, practical, genuine brand of Republican politics, which we might as well be putting in the Museum of Natural History at this point, because when he leaves office after his second term, I'm not sure we're going to see much more of this. We could put him alongside the woolly mammoth, but let's put this video up about what DeWine had to say about this whole controversy.
And here's a question I never thought I would have to ask, but do you see any evidence as governor of the state that Haitian immigrants are eating pets?
No, absolutely not. That's what the mayor said. That's what the chief of police has said. I think it's unfortunate that this came up. Let me tell you what we do know, though. What we know is that the Haitians who are in Springfield are legal. They came to Springfield to work. Ohio is on the move, and Springfield has really made a great resurgence with a lot of companies coming in. These Haitians came in to work for these companies. What the companies tell us is that they are very good workers. They're very happy to have them there. And frankly, that's helped the economy. Now, are there problems connected? Well, sure. When you go from a population of 58,000 and add 15,000 people onto that, you're going to have some challenges and some problems. And we're addressing those. We're working on those every single day. Primary care is essential. The other thing we're working a lot on is driving. We have Haitians who, frankly, many times have not driven before. We need to get more driver's training, and we're working on that. So these are things that we are working on. Springfield is moving forward. I've always felt that, and as the governor of the state of Ohio, we want people who want to come here who are legal, where they come from another state or another country, who want to work.
So Governor, let me.
That is really moving forward.
two things about this, Ravi. One, I think one of the most helpful quotes out of all this has come from Mayor Rue, the mayor of Springfield, who said, "What we need is help, not hate," which I think is a great way to describe this campaign and the Harris Walz campaign. It's about help. It's not about hate. And what all of this reminds me a lot of, in my personal experience, is the way Ferguson was portrayed in 2014, when there was unrest there after Michael Brown was killed by a police officer. And because Ferguson was portrayed, and I think is still thought of, certainly by folks on the right and largely by the whole country because of the way they're portrayed, as a lawless place. A lawless place that I think people think of as, frankly, from the way it was portrayed, I think, for one thing, not that this matters, but I think people think that the town is 100% black, and that when they look at like the problems that clearly existed at that time in the leadership, I think a lot of people unfairly assign that to being black leadership. The truth was, Ferguson was a town that was really diverse demographically. More diverse than most American towns. I mean, folks of all sorts of different backgrounds living right next door to each other. You go to the farmer's market there and everybody is together and they're all neighbors. And it's actually a really nice place. And, you know, it had the same problems that a lot of places that aren't really high income have. But the leadership at that time, like the mayor was this Republican guy who had been elected by a small minority that was voting in municipal elections. And he was, frankly, a complete jerk. I can't remember his name, but I ran into him a bunch of times. And so that's what was really going on in Ferguson. But Ferguson was portrayed in a completely different way by the right wing and by right wing media. And I remember how devastating it was to people in the town and how upsetting it was. And the same thing is happening here. It's really unfair to the people of Springfield.
Well, this guy, Chris Rufo, who's kind of an education, so-called policy thinker, the guy who's on the critical race theory beat, he works at the Manhattan Institute, tweeted out, "I'll provide a $5,000 bounty to anyone who could provide my team with hard, verifiable evidence that Haitian immigrants are eating cats in Springfield, Ohio. Deadline is Sunday, go," which, as you'd imagine, prompted people to send him all kinds of ambiguous photos, none of which turned out to go anywhere. His own Manhattan Institute colleague, Bruce Rydell, tweeted out, "Now that the Haitian story has been confirmed as a racist hoax, don't expect its high-profile peddlers to spend 3 minutes in self-reflection. They don't care about the truth, and they've already moved on to inventing 5 more fake stories to demonize other vulnerable communities. My hatred of this garbage transcends partisan politics. I deplore liars, bullies, demagogues, and those in power who purposely endanger the safety of vulnerable communities for political gain." Well, good for Bruce. Rufo is, one of these kind of political entrepreneurs of the Trump era, who have their base of people. And, as somebody who has friends in common with the folks over at Manhattan Institute, I hope the pressure's on them to clean their shit up, because there's like half the people over there are serious conservative thinkers who just have different ideas about government, and half of them are political arsonists.
Yeah. Well, they're getting a lot of what they want, because it turns out that this and other BS narratives about immigration are really affecting the numbers. Do you want to go through those?
Yeah, this is from Scripps Ipsos. Just one poll, but I think it makes intuitive sense, especially for those of you in the middle of the country. A majority of Americans support mass deportation of undocumented immigrants. 54% of respondents said they strongly or somewhat support the policy, including 86% of Republicans, 58% of independents, and even 25% of Democrats. 39% of respondents called immigration a top issue for the campaign, second only to immigration, which topped the list at 57%. So if you're thinking from Harris's point of view, inflation, immigration, having those two things at the top of the list, not great. Trump has a 10-point advantage on respondents who think he'll do a better job there. 9 in 10 Democrats and 52% of Republicans say they support a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants. So some good news there. And half of Americans say they're concerned about non-citizens voting in the 2024 election, including, again, a quarter of Democrats. So if you're the Trump team, you're saying, this may not be how we want to talk about this, but any week we're talking about immigration and not IVF or abortion is a win for us.
Yeah, that's absolutely what it is. They just see this is one of the, we know that that's why they're doing it, because they're trying to press one of their few areas of advantage. 2, even if they were not targets of opportunity to press this as an area of advantage, we know they would do that because every 2 years in September, they invent a new way in which people who are not white are coming to your house to kill you. That's how they do it. You remember the caravan? Like, they tried to create the rumor there was another caravan a few weeks ago, and it just didn't work again. Remember when Ebola was coming to North Carolina? Like, that's how this works. You can set your clock by the idea that in every 2 years, within a couple months of an election, they're going to do everything they can to make you afraid of people who are not originally from this country, while every day, 24 hours a day for 2 years, all the time, they're trying to make you afraid of people who are not white, who already live in this country and are from this country. Like, that's how it works. People who are not white are scary. People who are not white and are from somewhere else are not just scary, they're aggressive. And that's how they do it. That's kind of all that the established Republican Party has left at this point.
And I think if I'm the Harris campaign at this point, I use this rate cut as a transition point to really talk about the economy. And obviously, it's a little tricky when you're Harris talking about the economy, but I think every surrogate needs to now be talking about how the economy is actually a lot better than the media is portraying it to be, and that Republicans are portraying it to be, because we're forfeiting now good numbers by and large. Like, yes, everything could be better, but real wage growth is up over 4 years ago. The stock market's at record levels. The money in people's pockets is more than it was, even on a real level, than it was 4 years ago. Unemployment's at historic lows. They've achieved what appears to be a soft landing. And I think they might have been worried that if this rate cut was a little shaky and that led to like a fall, because the fall tends to have lower stock market performance in general for reasons that are, hard to figure out. There are all sorts of theories about, are people dumping stocks ahead of the tax season, whatever. It's not what this podcast is about. But I think maybe they were worried about that. They were worried about like another day, like a few weeks ago, like I think it was in August, where there was a huge dip and everybody was worried that we were heading into a recession. I think it's time to roll the dice, and you could protect yourself by ensuring that Harris isn't the one making these points. But I think all the rest of us need to start saying, look, this economy, they're lying to you about it, just like they're lying to you about crime statistics. This country is actually in a lot better shape.
It's a great point. They've given us a huge opening. Everything they said about Springfield, Ohio was a lie. Here are all the other things they're lying about.
Right. And I understand why Harris has been careful about not saying that the economy is doing well. And she, I think inartfully sidestepped it and got away with it in that first question of the debate. But I think the rest of us have got to be talking about this. This needs to be left and right. And I think all the independent expenditures and the PACs, where they don't have to say paid for by Kamala Harris, I think all of that should be really juicing the economic message here, because it's time to transition. If Harris can get it to a dead even on the economy, or even, just slightly better than where she is right now, I think she wraps up this race. Okay, Jason, let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Joe Rogan, of all people, praising Kamala Harris. We're going to talk about RFK Jr. Quietly saying crazy things that we should take note of, the assassination attempt on Trump.
Actually, it looks like we're not going to take the break yet.
Break.
We're going to take the break in a minute. So good news. Stick with us for now. We'll take the break in a minute when the producers have the ads queued up. Okay, let's go straight to the Rogan praising Harris clip.
Okay, let's do it.
Let me tell you, before I say anything, I just want to say, whoever's helping her, whoever's coaching her, whoever's the puppet master running the strings, you did a fucking amazing job.
She did a great job.
They did an amazing job from the moment Biden drops out, forcing Biden to drop out. Right, whatever they're doing, whoever's writing those speeches, getting her to deliver them, coaching her, she's nailing it. She nailed that one speech. She's like, "Say it to my face."
Oh yeah,
everybody's cheering.
Yeah, she nailed it, dude.
And then last night, to me, when I was like, "Oh my God, this is jujitsu," where she's like, "If you go to his rallies, his crowds are boring. They're tired. They all leave her. My crowds are the best crowds. I have the number one crowd." He couldn't help himself.
And she got him. She baited him on that. She walked him right into it.
100%. 100%. See, the difference in that debate was not a difference in like who's going to have better policies, who's going to be better for the country. The difference in the debate, in my opinion, was who was better prepared. She was way better prepared. And even when it came to answering tough questions, instead of answering, she would just say things that she believes.
Yeah, sure.
And they sounded real good.
Yeah, that's the
soundbite.
That's called being a savvy politician.
It's also called being someone who's working with a team versus someone who's like, they said Trump, that deal was the best deal. They've never seen a deal like this before. They said, how did you put that deal together?
People said that was just brilliant. Yeah, I know. It's like
he's not working with a team that's like, I mean, I know he's doing like mock debates. I know he did one with, I think he did one with Tulsi Gabbard, but someone needs to like tell him, like, you've got these tiny little windows and you should have all the words ready for those windows.
He started
there should
out
be no repeating things.
Yeah, he started.
So I love that in this is the best it's going to get from Rogan on Harris.
Yeah.
Like he's obviously, it's like a backhanded compliment. Everything is, it's almost like she's this puppet and all the people.
Yeah, he literally said, "Good job, puppet masters."
Yeah, good. All these puppeteers around her. Now he says something really important to zero in on here. Now, if I had a relationship with Rogan, I'd be like, let's reflect on the fact that the one person who perhaps you, Rogan, we don't know, want to be president can't work in teams. Now that does seem to be a fairly important skill with the president of the United States. And then this other person seems to be incredibly strong at putting together great teams, working with them, and then performing well in a high pressure situation. Perhaps that's relevant for the job.
I think it's important to remember that as exercised as we all get about the way Joe Rogan talks about everything from vaccines to presidential candidates, he's largely never going to be influenced, because the reason Joe Rogan's show is popular is because the vibe is a couple of people who don't know that much sitting around talking about events that just happened, like, you know, at a bar or at the break room at work. And that's what makes it fun to listen to. And he has guests on who come with lots of information, often agendas, but he doesn't know anything about it. And he's just a curious guy. And so what Rogan is doing there is Rogan is talking about that the way even a Trump supporter who doesn't like have an agenda of their own, doesn't usually go on TV, would talk about it. That's what makes the show appealing to people. And so, you know, I think you're right. I think that's about as good as you're going to get. But Rogan, I don't think has an agenda other than I think the guy is just kind of biased, because he's basically just like a bro who is like most of the bros who are voting for Trump, but are potentially gettable, maybe.
I also think there's a lot of people in his ear. Like he spends a decent amount of time with the Ben Shapiro types, maybe Dana White, and all these kind of people who are Trump people.
Dana White.
I think he just has more people. Like he's like any human being. He has more people in his life who are Trump people than Biden people. And I'm sure there are Biden people, but I just think there are fewer. All right.
Well, can I say one last thing? The other similarity, the other thing to take from it is that Joe Rogan is watching this the way a lot of America is watching politics, and that is he's watching it as sports. And that's important to remember, is that if you're listening to this or watching this, you're not watching it as sports. You and I are not experiencing it as sports. We're experiencing it as, my God, this is anxiety inducing. The ramifications for our country are enormous, but most Americans do not experience day-to-day politics that way, because it is merged so tightly now with popular culture, just like sports has, that other than issues that directly affect them, when they watch the debate, there's an entertainment aspect, and it's really important to remember that sort of thing when you're trying to persuade people.
All right, well, let's jump into these ads, and then we're going to come back and talk about some stuff RFK Jr. is doing. We're going to talk about the assassination attempt. We're going to check in with Harris HQ and more.
Fall can be a stressful season, and stress leads to feeling drained. To maintain your energy levels and a heart-healthy routine, it's best to avoid relying on stimulants. Superbeats Heart Chews offer a convenient, delicious, plant-based way to support healthy blood pressure and circulation. Enjoy a heart-healthy boost without the jitters. Paired with a healthy lifestyle, the unique antioxidant compound in Superbeats is clinically shown to be nearly 2 times more effective at promoting normal blood pressure than a healthy lifestyle alone. Superbeats Heart Chews are incredibly delicious and so much better than any alternative supplements out there. I take my Superbeats Heart Chews each morning, and it helps me kickstart my morning routine. After taking my Superbeats Heart Chews, I feel like I have more energy and I'm ready to take on the day. Here's something: more doctors, pharmacists, and cardiologists recommend Superbeats for heart health support than any other beet brand. Superbeats Heart Chews Also offer a convenient way to support healthy blood pressure since they're individually wrapped so you can take them on the go. Double your potential with Superbeats Heart Shoes. Get a free 30-day supply of Superbeats Heart Shoes on all bundles and 15% off your first order by going to getsuperbeats.com and using code MAJORITY. That's getsuperbeets.com, code MAJORITY.
Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. And on the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs and gives you tailored advice to improve your nutrition, workout, sleep, and even stress management. All you have to do is breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning, and you'll know what's going on with your metabolism and whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs. And then Lumen gives you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on your measurements. You could also breathe into it before and after workouts and meals so you know exactly what's going on in your body in real time. And Lumen will give you tips to keep on top of your health game. This is really important. I've been running this fitness community for years, and often what I hear from people is, my metabolism is X, my metabolism is Y. But this actually gives you the data to actually confirm or in some ways challenge some assumptions you have about your body. And because your metabolism is at the center of everything your body does, optimal metabolic health translates to a bunch of benefits, including easier weight management, improved energy levels, better fitness levels, better sleep, and it could track your cycle as well as the onset of menopause and adjust your recommendations to keep your metabolism healthy through hormonal shifts so you can keep up your energy and stave off cravings. So if you want to take the next step in improving your health, go to lumen.me/majority to get 15% off your Lumen. That's lumen.me/majority for 15% off your purchase. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. All right, RFK Jr. I think RFK Jr. still matters a lot. I was looking at some of the numbers this morning, and a lot of these people who I would say are Trump aligned, but on policy, but on character, still have their issues with Trump, were RFK people. And I think they're just an important group to keep an eye on. And what you see from Trump is he's talking the talk on the issues that matter most to RFK people, particularly FDA stuff, vaccine stuff, all that kind of language. And it's like a micro-targeting thing. All he needs to do is say the right things to them, and I think he's going to bring enough of them along, which is why I think in some ways why some of these polls are a little tighter than one would suspect based on things like Trump's debate performance. And so I think it's important to keep checking in on RFK Jr. because if I'm the Harris campaign, you need to remind the rest of the electorate what RFK Jr. thinks he's been promised in this process. Mm-hmm. And I think this clip helps us understand. This is him with Tucker Carlson.
And if given the power to do that, what'll you do?
That's unclear because there's no, at this point, thank you. Like I said, I'm on the transition committee, and there's no, we don't have, I don't have a post for myself that's picked out. I know that I'm going to be deeply involved in helping to choose the people who can run FDA and NIH and CDC in a way that restores public health rather than.
Can you imagine if you're at FDA or NIH and Bobby Kennedy all of a sudden? I mean, they must be dying. They must be dying.
But I'll bring in people to run those agencies like Callie Means, like Casey Means.
And you think they're gonna, they have nightmares about that.
Yeah, they should.
Okay, who is that person?
I'm looking it up right now. She's the chief medical officer of Levels, which is actually a company I'm an investor in. I'm like, oh no.
Yeah, I tried Levels out. I kind of liked it.
Yeah, I in my quick internet scan, I couldn't figure out what makes her controversial, if anything. So I'm not sure what, and I don't want to say anything negative about her.
Maybe we got the wrong Casey Means. Maybe we should just stop.
She is a doctor. She has written a book about metabolic health. Maybe Jeremy could track anything down here. So I don't want to imply there's anything wrong with her. Maybe she's totally fine, especially since I have used Levels before and think it's a good product. And I liked it enough that I invested in it. But we'll see. For folks out there, I'm sure you could find something. They've appeared on RFK's podcast, Jeremy's saying. So the bigger thing here, though, is that he seems to think he's going to have a lot of input on who these people are going to be.
Yes, because he's on the transition committee, which is a committee full of lots of people. He might be overestimating his influence, but probably not, right? Because that's how Trump works. Like Trump was like, hey, quid pro quo, you do this, you drop out, because Trump doesn't care. Like, that's the other thing. Trump doesn't care. If he were, if what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. cared about was tax cuts and where they go for rich people and that kind of thing, then Trump would care. But Trump's the guy who did Operation Warp Speed to get the vaccine and had no problem kicking that to the curb and pretending he had nothing to do with it.
Here's the metaphor for what that transition would look like. Let's hope we never have to see this. Is, in the 70s, there was this huge blackout in New York, which led to a series of humongous riots, right? And the thing is, when you're in these riots and you're a motivated person, you have a huge leg up if you have a theory about what it is you want. So if you're like, I want to go to this car dealership and steal this car in the riot, then you have a huge leg up on the person who's just going to walk down the street and just walk into any store. Right. RFK Jr. during the riot that will be the transition, that is the Trump transition, is the motivated rioter. He's going to go right into the car dealership, which is for him is the FDA, the CDC. And because it's so chaotic, he's going to drive right out of that lot with the car that he wants.
That's a perfect analogy. All right. With that, Ravi, tell us about what's going on with the Harris Walz campaign.
Yeah, and I feel bad that we've been shortchanged.
Before we get to that, we should talk about the assassination attempt in the
let's do that. I don't think our audience needs us to say that. Obviously, glad that the assassination attempt was foiled and that this person will be brought to justice. I have major questions about the Secret Service and how they would let this guy be that close in the perimeter. And apparently, this guy was there for 12 hours on the golf course, waiting.
It's a large perimeter to protect.
Yeah, but still, it's the former president and a candidate. I just think that.
Yeah. I mean, obviously they need to do it. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I agree. I know that the Secret Service is understaffed, and I have all sorts of theories about how to fix all this kind of stuff. That's not what this is. What I think is really important is how the former president and his people have responded to this. He truthed out a accusation against Democrats, immigrants, all these kinds of people, and so he's, This time there was no bullet that grazed his head or that was shot at him in any way that I could tell. And so we saw what he did last time, which is he made it through halfway his RNC speech where he was changing course up until that moment. And since then has been as aggressively violent and dishonest and cynical in his language as possible, and has been bringing that violence to a lot of people who don't enjoy Secret Service protection, like the residents, for instance, of Springfield. And so I don't think this is going to help him in the ways that the last one, I think, helped him with public perception. In many ways, I think people could be just tired of this. And I think a good example of the kind of rhetoric that we're seeing here is from Don Jr. This is a clip of him going on Fox News.
And they insinuated all of this rhetoric to get some of the most radical people of their party, unfortunately that's becoming a lot more people, to go after and literally try to kill him. Enough is enough. America doesn't have to go down this route, but it's going to continue. You think if they're going to stop, if they stop Trump, you don't think that every person watching this right now is ultimately in their crosshairs, their freedoms, their liberties, all of the things that they love about their country? That's all on the table this election, Jesse. That's why it matters. We can't have apathy. We can't sit it out. We can't let the nonsense get in the way. We have to understand what the Democrats are doing because they're saying it out loud. They're not pretending anymore, Jesse. They're saying it out loud. When someone tells you who they are, listen.
Yep, we believe them now.
Okay, clearly what happened is last time there was, thankfully Trump survived, but the lesson that the Trump camp and the Trump family learned is, that was really good politically. And now things are not going well for them politically. They want to change things. And this time, the assassination attempt didn't come with visuals. It didn't happen on live television. I would venture to guess the majority of Americans are unaware that there was a second assassination attempt. And so they're trying to change the narrative away from all the momentum that Kamala Harris has, which, that part, if that's all you knew, that's pretty acceptable fair play politics, right? Is to try and change the narrative. But it matters how you do it. And when you do it by saying that Kamala Harris is trying to kill Donald Trump, that is wrong. That is not de-escalation. That is escalation.
Yes.
That is weaponization of public fervor. And it's more offensive than the veneers that he seems to be struggling to speak through. That's just a dental.
One final point on this. The CNN put together a cut of starting with Vance talking about, supposedly violent rhetoric from Democrats. And then they showed some clips of Trump doing some things that sound awfully similar to what Vance is describing.
Look, we can disagree with one another, we can debate one another, but we cannot tell the American people that one candidate is a fascist, and if he's elected, it is going to be the end of American democracy.
Except here is Vance's actual running mate saying exactly that.
It's a choice between communism and freedom. This is communist, this is Marxist, this is fascist. There's a radical left Marxist, communist, fascist. She's a Marxist, she's a fascist. Comrade Kamala Harris. Comrade Kamala Harris. If Comrade Kamala Harris gets 4 more years, you will be living a full-blown banana republic ruled by an anarchy and a tyranny. They're scum. They're scum. And they want to take down our country. They are absolute garbage.
You know what is relevant here is that when he calls Kamala Harris a communist, it's just an epithet. It's all it is. There's no basis in reality. There's no basis in the idea that she ascribes to any kind of Marxism or whatever. He's out there saying that the model for a world leader is Viktor Orban. It's like you're describing only what he is and what he's doing. They want to take out of bounds. And also, he is a threat to American democracy. Now,
he said he would be a dictator on day one. He refused to engage in a peaceful transfer of power. He had to be forced to hand over the presidency last time. I could go on and on and on.
Yeah.
Like saying true things about him inbounds. We're in the middle of an election. I'm sorry. And by the way, they're saying false incendiary things that are way more heated than the true things we're saying about him.
And I don't understand how anybody could listen to anything that any of the Democrats have said and say anybody who's mentally there, they want me to be violent and take action. Like literally, we've just had 3.5 years of us talking about the tragedy that was January 6th and them trying to revise history to say that it was a good thing. Our entire political philosophy over the last 3.5 years has been rooted in the idea that violence is bad and violence makes everything worse. So it is not fair, and we don't have to stand for that. We don't have to just give into it.
Well, let's check in with Kamala HQ. They just put out a new and powerful ad featuring Hadley Duvall.
I've never slept a full night in my entire life. I was 5 years old when my stepfather abused me for the first time. I just felt like I was alone on a planet with a monster. I was 12 when he impregnated me. I just remember thinking, I have to get out of my skin. I can't be me right now. This can't be it. I didn't know what to do. I was a child. I didn't know what it meant to be pregnant at all. But I had options. Because Donald Trump overturned Roe v. Wade, girls and women all over the country have lost the right to choose, even for rape or incest. Donald Trump did this. He took away our freedom.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
That is a powerful ad.
Yeah, I forget who made this point. It's if you're in these swing states, I can only imagine how many ads are coming out to
it's
say
nonstop.
GDP this, inflation that, the price of this, people coming over the border, and it's often abstracted away, right? It's numbers, it's statistics, it's trends. The ads that break through are stories and moving stories that resonate. And this is a story that really resonates. And Duval has been doing the rounds. This is her on MSNBC talking about her story.
I really like to ask people, could you sit down with me one-on-one and listen to every detail of trauma that I had to experience for about 10 years? And if you can't do that comfortably, which you should not be able to, you should not feel comfortable walking into a voting booth and voting for a man who has the audacity to tell me what to do with that trauma. And, if that doesn't get through to some people, then, look at your daughters, look at your mothers, your sisters, look at your neighbor. Because I am a very normal, regular person, and this happened to me, and it was happening for so long, and it's happening to so many others right now. And, you can't deny that, and it's heartbreaking. And that's why we're speaking. We're speaking for those who can't speak for themselves. And we're trying to flip votes and change people's minds while we can, but we're not going to be able to get through to everybody, and that's okay. But we just need to be able to spread a clear message. And, it's not a question on where we stand in our decision about pro-choice.
In the very same clip, that speech in Georgia that Vance gave before, he forcefully defended Dobbs. And so they're not backing up from that. I guess the memo has gone out that Trump is flipping back. We could talk about IVF in a second, but any more reactions to Duval?
One, she's really compelling and admirable. Just really impressive and a fantastic advocate. Two, it's a much smaller point, but one of the reasons that ad is so powerful is because we just have better music than they do. I mean, that's a Billie Eilish song that Billie Eilish allowed the campaign to use.
Which actually, if people are listening to this and you did not get that ad, it is because of the Eilish song. I'm looking at our notes from our producer now. It's possible that might have flagged the ad. So if you're listening to this and it didn't show up on your YouTube after the fact, it could be because of that.
Yeah. Well, but if you take that same ad and you try and put a Kid Rock track over it, it ain't gonna work. Ted Nugent under that, it's not gonna be a good score. So Hadley Duvall, incredibly impressive. That's 90% of my reaction, and then 10% is, it pays to be the party that more creatives actually want to be associated with, because it is emotionally evocative.
Now the Senate, I don't know the full details of this. You might, but they voted down or blocked an IVF bill that apparently would have guaranteed access to IVF around the country. JD Vance was asked about this. Let's go to this clip.
The Senate today blocked an IVF bill. Do you have any comments you want to share about that, especially considering last time Trump was in Western Wisconsin, he shared his support for that?
So I think we have to be careful here, because the Senate did not block an IVF bill. The Senate blocked a ridiculous show vote bill that had no chance of passing.
Look, here's what I'll tell you about IVF. Is that during the campaign season, they are going to say over and over again that they're for IVF and all that stuff. And the moment that a Republican majority Senate sends them a bill that outlaws it, Donald Trump will have no problem signing it. And that's exactly what he'll do, because he won't care. And we should never underestimate the fact that this is a guy who, A, doesn't care most of the time, and B, will be in his second term. So that's exactly what's going to happen.
Well, let's check in down ballot just on one race here, which is the North Carolina governor's race. North Carolina is a swing state on the presidential level. It has thankfully been in the gubernatorial mansion in the hands of Roy Cooper for 2 terms, and there is a spirited campaign to replace Cooper. I've been following this pretty closely because I have family members who live down in North Carolina, and also because the candidate on the Republican side is a strange cat. A video just came out of him talking about birth control. Let's go to this clip.
You see, in this age of information, we use a lot of that information. One of the things we love to tell our young men and women is, we want to empower you so that you can be strong in society. Particularly, we love to tell our young women that. We want to empower you. We want to help you to build up your mind so you can be empowered. Here's a novel idea. Why don't you use some of that building up of your mind and building up of empowerment to move down here to this region down here and get this under control? See, because this region right here, that's the only region on your body that can make life and take life. If there's anything we need to be telling our young people is they need to be responsible with their reproductive systems. That means you don't lay down and act like you're making a baby till you're ready to have a baby. All this giving out of birth control and advising people how to, well, you see, if you do it this way, you won't have a baby. If you do it that way, here's how you don't have a baby. You don't have what you do to make a baby till you're ready to have that baby. You be responsible with your body. That's a novel idea. Has not reached our school system, sadly.
Worth noting for the audio audience that when he says get it under control, he points to his groin.
Yeah. Which
seems like a winning message to me, Jason.
Which apparently the groin can take life, Ravi. I was unaware of that.
Well, he should know, by the way, because in 1989, he paid for a woman that he impregnated to get an abortion. Turns out that person eventually became his wife. It's a very time to kill type of situation.
It is.
Still, I don't judge him for that, but certainly shouldn't be judging other people, right?
Hey, sidebar about A Time to Kill and that plot point is that in the movie, the character witness who he says that about, that's what really happened. In the book, it's just a thing he says. It's not true at all, but it persuades the jury.
Oh, wow.
In the book, he's just like, what if I told you that he later married her? Never actually did. It's just a lawyer trick in the book. They changed it for the movie. Anyway, but this is also a guy where there were recent articles where former employees of a porn shop said that he came in every single night. So, that
sounds like a guy who's getting it under control.
Yeah, clearly an expert in
getting
getting it under control.
To each their own.
I mention it not just to slander the guy, but also, I'm not trying to do that. The larger point I want to make is so often these women-hating men are of that character. They are, it's like the incel world. They hate women because they see something, portrayed that they feel is not attainable for them. And so they turn that into hate directed at someone else. And I think that's what he qualifies for. And,
I mean, obviously it's a long trope of, the most anti-gay preachers often have
exactly
some things that they haven't been totally upfront with themselves and others about. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, one for us, we were going to play a clip of Trump saying crazy things about global warming, or climate change is not worth it. He basically says that it'll lead to more waterfront property, which is something he said before, but we figured we would remind people of the crazy stuff he said. He said a lot of other things. I think he said Bagram was in Alaska.
Yes, he did. He said, it's in Afghanistan. So that's pretty far from Alaska. All right, you go first on one for us.
Well, I'm really excited about yours. I don't really have what the heck is going on out here.
You got a great John Deere hat there.
I got a great John Deere hat. I just finished a book proposal with your cousin. We're working on a book all about like my sort of one skill passion a year.
Mm-hmm.
Really excited about it. He's worked with you on your books too, and he's a really talented writer. And I love harassing the shit out of him. I hope he's not listening to this to hit the deadline.
No, don't worry, he doesn't listen. To this.
Yeah. But I told your wife this the other day. I was like, I just have fallen into a rhythm where I just wake up and harass your cousin. I hope that's okay.
He's great.
Yeah.
I just was on a call with him a couple hours ago. How'd your tennis tournament go?
So I creamed the first guy 8-0. And then in the second round, part of me was going into this because I'm going upstate this weekend with my mom. And so I was like, all right, this coming weekend, I wouldn't be able to make it to the second round. So I had like an ease about me. I was like, I think I'm going to win this second match because I have no pressure. the guy starts warming up, and it was like Novak Djokovic. The ball was spinning in every direction, and he saw that I was an 8-0 in the previous round. And then when I started warming up, I could see in his face, he's like, "Is this guy messing with me? How is like?" I think he may have signed up for the wrong tournament because it was an intermediate tournament. This guy was flinging it, and it was like I took one game off of him and was so proud of it. I actually said to myself as I was like down 4 or 5-0 because it's up to 8. I was like, if I could just take one off of him, I'll be proud of myself. And that's what I did. And actually, after it happened, I said to him, I came here. I did what I needed to do when he left.
So that's interesting. The way that they, because Diana plays where it's like 3 sets in her tournaments, but you play sort of, is that games or what is that?
Yeah, it's just because in the early rounds, they move it fast.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because hers is like by the time she gets to the second tennis match, she's exhausted, and so that
it would help me if they were
it makes
longer.
sense. Yeah, you would, because you're in great shape.
For me is conditioning, not actual skill. But
okay, for mine, some of the audience knows I've been doing a little bit of surrogate work. Work is not the right term. I volunteered to do a little bit of stuff for the Harris campaign. Sometimes I get asked by cable news anyway. Sometimes it's because maybe the Harris campaign suggested they book me for something. I got asked to come on to the morning show on CNN News Central or whatever it is on Saturday, and just to talk about, they were interviewing me about Harris and Trump and all that stuff. And then they asked this question about which I, as you know, I regularly get about, are you going to run for office or would you take a position in the Harris administration and that kind of thing? And we're playing this clip because it ended up being a very funny exchange, somewhat unintentionally. For the audio audience, as you listen to this, know that some of the reactions are to the fact that it turns out my Mac camera started doing some of that stuff that a lot of people are familiar with that happens like on Zoom calls where like it does a thumbs up or it does fireworks. And it's just sort of me rolling with it and everybody having a good time. So please enjoy.
You mentioned, you are not a candidate, haven't been for some time. What do you think the future might hold for you? Can you see yourself getting back into elected politics? Could you see yourself serving in a potential Harris administration if that were come to pass?
It's very flattering that people still ask these questions. I've spent a lot of years working very hard to get people to think about me this way. I have a great job. In the last several years, I have made a greater impact on the world by building villages of tiny houses for homeless veterans, by actually getting involved in Afghan evacuation efforts and starting an organization that has gotten over 2,000 Afghans out of the country, including my translator's family who now lives down the street. And as I rattle these things off, I'm starting to realize I sound like a politician who wants to run for something. So let me stop rattling these things off and say, no, I have no interest in either. And I have no interest in either. And really, if at some point 2 things happen, which is my kids stop being interested in hanging out with me, which, they're 11 and 4, so I think I got a few years. And 2, if the other thing that happens is, did I get the thumbs up on the, I don't understand how this technology works. Give me the thumbs up on the thing. Well, look, I'm a thumbs up about how my life is right now. And the other thing would be, oh, look at this. Amazing. I'm breaking new ground on CNN. The point I was going to make, the second point is just that if at some point I no longer feel I can make a greater impact out of office, which is how I felt the last few years, then maybe. But, politicians like to say that's not what I'm thinking about right now. And actually, John, that's all they're thinking about. That's actually not what I'm thinking about right now.
I feel like a whole lot just happened. I feel like a lot just happened right there with the fireworks maybe telling us one thing, and
what
then
else can this thing do?
And you maybe worked through some issues there where maybe you announced you were running and maybe you announced you weren't. There's a lot going on with that. People will be analyzing that for years to come.
I'm on your WebEx. This is not my tech. I don't know.
I am cry laughing. I am cry laughing at Jason Kander, who is one of the funniest people on the planet. Oh my God.
Jason Kander.
What an appearance.
Yeah. Breaking new ground, Ravi.
How do you turn that stuff off?
I don't know. Trust me, I've been trying to figure it out since Saturday.
Here? No,
probably.
That's weird.
Let's see. It probably does on mine.
No. Oh,
there it goes.
Yeah.
See, it's working on mine.
I've turned it off somehow. Yeah.
People have sent me all sorts of recommendations since then. Apparently, if you do like the double peace sign, you get balloons. I'm not sure how that works. No balloons here.
Yeah,
Oh, there they are. Confetti.
Whatever you've got works
Upside
differently than
down.
mine.
Upside down. Does it do something? No.
No.
Like there, the down. I don't know. No, I think we should probably end this podcast. Oh wait. Yeah, I went double thumbs
didn't
down.
know
I got
that one.
rain.
Wow.
How about that? Okay. Well, you know what? I think we've said what needs to be said here, clearly.
Yeah.
So thanks very much, everybody. You can find me at Jason Kander on social media. You can find Ravi at Ravi M. Gupta. Please leave a 5-star review. I mean, just for that last clip alone, hopefully you will. Thank you to the Midas Mighty. And remember, we all have a platform. Make sure to use yours today.